Hi, I'm Colleen Ferrary. I'm the founder of Small Business USA, and I'm so honored to have Brian Noe with me today. He is the guy I call when I get nervous about the economy, about the future, about what's going on. And I happened to call him the other day and ask him some questions about inflation. So for all of our business owners and members, I'm so honored to have him here today. And Brian, thank you so much for being here today and putting up with my myriad of questions last week.
Yes, well, the questions are excellent. I love talking about economics like other people like talking about baseball or football. So, yeah.
Well, Brian is not only a business owner and a financial guy, which we'll talk about later, but also has a long history of being an economist. And I really want to get right into what people are worried about right now, and me in particular, and let you run with that. But we're in a place where inflation in the past has incontestably destabilized the economy, leading to 4 recessions. And I just worry about our current situation. And I would love for you to share what you shared with me last week about why this current situation is different.
Yeah. Thank you, Colleen, for the opportunity. I appreciate you inviting me in today for your people. Basically, inflation is a sign and a symptom. So in other words, inflation in and of itself isn't a cause of an issue, it's the result of an issue. And, going back a step, what it really comes down to is there's either, there's too much money chasing too few goods, right? And what's different here is it's hitting both sides, both the supplier side and the consumer side. So basically, what it comes down to is the 2020 economic activity temporarily collapsed because of the COVID outbreak. And this is unprecedented. It's a little bit similar to the oil embargo of the early 70s, but this one had a very different spin to it, and the impact on not only the global supply, but also on consumers as well. So I think what it showed in 2000 is the global economy and the just-in-time inventory is a wildly fragile system. We don't have the redundancies in our supply chain that we had back in the 70s when most of the supply chain was domestic. So the 70s we were dealing primarily with oil and energy. Now we're dealing with a myriad of issues. So it's not only COVID, but it's number 2 to me, there's a lot of market manipulation going on, right? So some of these global shortages are, logical responses to suppliers who are making a lot of money.
Yeah, this is a terrifying time because corporations are enjoying inflation, right? Some of them are raising prices for no reason, because they can. Well, I shouldn't say no reason, but because they can, and it's timely and preparing.
Right. So you go back to the big corporations that really run the dog, right? We're kind of hanging on by we wag the dog, or we have the dog by the tail, right? And that dog's running wherever that dog wants to go. And basically, a prudent decision in the early 2020 was to cut back on production, because you don't want to be stuck with inventory that you can't sell, or worse, becomes obsolete. So you cut back, and then we have this huge stimulus, which is unprecedented. It was larger than all the previous stimuluses combined. A massive bailout by the Federal Reserve, the biggest bailout in history, bigger than all the other bailouts combined. And what you had was this huge injection of cash into the system, right? So it created shortages on the demand side, strong demand for a lot of products. And you think housing, you think stock market, you think, cars, a lot of big ticket items, a lot of construction are all, the inflation is being driven by this huge demand because there's just so much money out there. Now, on the supplier side, there isn't really a rush to go back and increase production because they're making a lot of money. They're also getting hit with COVID because COVID is shutting down their lines, whether by government decree or by employees calling out sick or employees afraid to go to work. Depending on what country you're in, depends on how it hits the supply line. For everyone on this call, you really don't care what the cause is, right? you need to respond and react to the fact that the supply shortages have gone much longer than they were expected to go. And how much longer are they going to go? I use a real good example where you look at oil prices. Global demand for energy is up 5% a year in 2021 and 2022, expected. That's the same as it was before 2020. But energy prices are up 50%. And that was before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So you have to ask the question, what changed? Demand is going up at the same rate it was before COVID, but prices are up 50%. That was the supply reduction. And basically, when oil went to negative $34, $35 a barrel in May 2020, the industry said, this can't happen again. The CEO of AutoNation came out and said, the manufacturers are really enjoying their high profit margins right now. What's their incentive to put a whole bunch of inventory out there and get into bidding wars with each other? Right? And if you took one of my economics classes, it would be, your typical oligopoly system. There's a handful of sellers, and if none of them start a price war, there's no price war. So who's the first company who's going to want to grab market share and drop the price and force production from the other companies to do the same thing? We haven't seen it yet. So these are the type of examples where, I guess I call it market manipulation, but it's really just, corporations maximizing profit and taking advantage of an opportunity that they have in front of them.
Yeah, I think, Brian, there's so many things as CEOs, like when I think about my CEOs and how do we help them and how do we prepare for the future? There's so many things right now that are all coming together. I mean, we have this Ukraine-Russia debacle going on right now, and
Right.
we have sanctions and we have inflation. We have, I just read that the average increase in corporation pay increase this year is 2.7. And unfortunately, inflation is so much higher than that. So we have less money in people's bank accounts. We have rising gas costs. I have to ask you, how do we prepare? How do we protect our current businesses and prepare for the future? What should I be helping these business owners prepare for going forward?
Right. Well, I think the one thing that's interesting is most people use the consumer price index as a gauge for inflation. I've negotiated that into numerous contracts over the years as a proxy, but it's really a proxy. That index was designed for the Federal Reserve to help control monetary supply, not control prices. So it's interesting how it's become the buzzword for inflation, because the fact of the matter is the CPI is not the consumer price inflation index. It's just the consumer price index. And you need a lot more context around that number to determine what's going on. American workers and suppliers, to a lesser degree, have been hit with much higher inflation than CPI, right? And of course, the less money you make, the bigger impact CPI is, right? If you make $1 million a year and prices go up 5, 6, 7%, what's the big deal? If you have an employee making 40, 50 grand a year and prices are going up 5, 6, 7%, much bigger deal. So there's a lot to unpack here, which we just don't have time to get into. I do think, to keep things kind of simple, you're in a car and you're driving, and there's two ways you can drive: out the windshield or looking in the rearview mirror. I suggest take the rearview mirror and throw it out the window, right? Because whatever's happened in the past is gone. And
100% agree.
Yep. And I think the mistake with the people I work with that I see often is ergodicity, right? And ergodicity comes in two forms. One is decision-making failures. There's an abuse of expertise. Knowledge is such a commodity now, you can get expertise anywhere to back up whatever position you're looking for.
Right.
Or even if you have an open mind, there's so much conflicting information out there. How does it apply to you?
Right.
Right. So it gets very difficult. People make a false sense of assumptions. They come up with this force of reason to make the assumptions fit, right? They'll even go out and get misleading information, right? Not because, it's true or not, it just fits the narrative. So instead of finding, is this information accurate and does it fit my situation? Sounds good to me, supports what I'm trying to do. And then the next thing you know, you're at a jam because there's a poor decision-making process set up. then we get into cognitive bias, right? We all have our own biases. And really
Sure.
what we look to do is hit the status quo, right? If we keep the status quo, it's easy, it's scalable, it's expedient, it's easy. That's what we've always done. I like what we've always done because it's always worked until it doesn't,
Right.
right? So fighting that is a real issue. So
Right.
people anchor themselves into a position, and then the blame thrower comes out, and it's it's this politician's fault, it's that politician's fault.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, no one person
Right.
is straightening out a global economy.
Right.
It's not going to happen in the United States or Russia or China or Europe
Right.
or anywhere. So we kind of have to get off that. And I think the final piece of advice is we all have some costs. Right. We all put investment into certain activities,
Mhm.
and the world changes around us, and it no longer works. And then we want to double down. Well, if I put twice as much effort into it and work Saturday, Sundays, doing the same thing, I can power through this.
Well, you know how I feel about that, right?
I
Let's work
do.
smarter. Let's
And
let's
less,
work smarter here.
right? I'm all about cutting down hours. If I can
Right.
cut down hours and make more money, I'm the happiest guy going, and
Right.
I'm a pretty happy guy.
Well,
So regardless of what's going on around me. So I think what it comes down to is at some point in time, you cut your losses, throw the rearview mirror out the window,
right.
and just clean the slate. And the best way to do it is just get some advisors around you, and keep your mind open. You want to facilitate questions to other people. In other words, don't think inwardly.
Right.
Think outwardly. What are other people thinking? Who's around you? Who knows your business? Who knows your personal side? I mean, why do we even work?
Right.
That's a good question. So I think that is what's really, really important. And then from there, you can come up with an inductive set of reasoning, and you're coming up with other people's expertise, not your own,
Right.
that's closer to you, and they understand and know your situation.
Right.
I think that's really big. Last point.
I think that was a plug for Small Business USA, Brian. So I'll take that.
It was and it is. I got to tell you, when I sit in a couple of groups, and we just talk, and then we get to know each other, and people share what they think is vulnerable.
Mhm.
And then next thing you know, you get these huge breakthroughs, you get these aha moments.
Yeah.
And then, people adjust their behavior, adjust their decision-making process, and it really helps. I mean, it absolutely really helps. You get a good group together, and there's nothing better. There really isn't.
Well, you're a great asset to your group. I know that. And I want to really just kind of go back on something that you said, Brian, that I think is so important, and where we're seeing business owners get really stuck right now. And we like that rear view mirror, when you've done what you've always done, chances are your businesses weren't here during the last, like a lot of our businesses weren't around for the last inflationary period in the 70s, or
right.
the last. So I mean, some of us have gone through recessions. I certainly have my share of recessions, and maybe that's why I'm hypersensitive to these conversations. But I think when I love that you said, be a part of these groups, and I know our boards are all talking about, like, okay, well, the price of oil is going to go up if we cut down, with this whole Ukraine-Russia thing. What does that mean? What does the ripple effect go down? 5 steps. If prices go up, gas goes up, who does that affect first? How does that affect your business today? What can you do to shift or pivot so it's not, as much of a challenge for your business as it may have been? Supply chains. We kind of went through this with all of our businesses in 2020. Thankfully, a lot of us were ahead of it, because we're saying, okay, if COVID shuts down a factory and you don't have supplies, do you have multiple vendors? Do you have, like, how does this all affect you? How does your pricing model affect you? So I think, like, what you're, where you talked me off the edge last week was really that just because we have inflation does not mean recession, which is where my mind really triggered. But I love some of the things like our unconscious bias, which is what I have, right? Like, some of these long-standing beliefs, they protect me. They protect Small Business USA, because I worry so much about reading those tea leaves. But
Right.
I do think that you're so smart to go out there and say, hey, listen, we need to kind of pay attention to our biases, but also pay attention to what's happening on a global scale and make sure that we're working with peers who really know our business to make the best long-term decisions. And it's not always what got us here is going to get us there. It's quite the opposite sometimes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that, what the absence of having other people to talk to tends to make it, for a lot of us, a win-lose game. Right. So, I'm a pilot. When the plane goes up in the air, we only know one thing: it will land.
Mm-hmm.
We want it to land where we want it to land, with no notable events, nothing exciting needs to happen, right? But it doesn't work that way.
Right.
So you need to be prepared for anything that can happen.
Awesome.
You may have to ditch in the water. You may have to land in the field. You may have to pick an alternative airport. You may have a fuel leak. You may have an engine failure. Your radios and communications may go out. So all these things can happen, and you want to be prepared. And when you're prepared for all the probable situations that can happen to your business and to your personal life, you eliminate what I call failure. Mm-hmm. Because the only real failure is the inability to anticipate a different outcome. Right?
I love that. I love that. But so like we need to put that on the headline of every.
Yeah. So whether you're a business owner or a family person, which we're all both to a degree, right? Or even management, any decision we make, whether it's with our children or a partner or a spouse or what, it doesn't matter, may not work out the way we think it's going to work out. But the world isn't A to B, it's not linear. The entire universe is concentric and it's random. Right. So A can go to B, C, D, E, F, G. Right. B can go to a different set of outcomes with different probabilities. So if we consider different outcomes, then we don't have failure. We have, oh, that didn't work out the way I thought it would, but no problem, because I got plan B. I'm going to do this instead. And I was already set up for it. I'm on the phone. Hey, I need this, I need that, or hey, I got to talk to you. I got a new problem. Let's talk it out. Let's get this fixed and let's get going. That's action. That's forward action. That's driving out the windshield. Right. Right. It's not looking in the mirror, back you up, saying, "Oh, what did I do wrong? I want to back up and do it over again." There's no do-overs, right?
No,
you just hit the car behind you, and that doesn't work.
True to that. True to that. Brian, this is so helpful. I so appreciate your time today and kind of sharing your wisdom. Any last pieces of advice for business owners that are kind of thinking about where are you, your situation, your business? How do we manage the economic turmoil of Ukraine and Russia, or inflation and all of this business?
Right. I think the bottom line is don't take ownership of other people's problems and try to stay out of the woe is us trenches. A lot of times in initial conversations I have with people, they'll start coming up with things. I'll look at them and go, and how does that impact you? One guy was pretty funny. I'll try to recreate the face, right? He's talking about that. And I go, okay. I go, so how does any of that impact you? And he went, I guess it doesn't.
Yeah.
Then why are we talking about this if it doesn't impact you? Right.
I had a CEO of a company yesterday morning called me at 7:15 in the morning and said, "Did you see what's happening? Colleen, did you see Russia and Ukraine? I was up till 4 a.m. and now like 3 hours later, he's calling me. What do I tell my team?" And I'm like, hold on. Like, it's the same thing. Like, okay, let's, first of all, what do you make sure they're okay, I guess, and not in an emotional state like you are. But how is this impacting your business and their lives today? Yeah. And let's kind of come up with a plan. And there is some emotion involved with this. People are talking bigger. That's a great question, topic.
Right? This was not a surprise.
Right.
This has been building up not for months. This really been building up since 2014.
Yeah.
If you go back even further, it's been building up since the wall fell and Eastern Europe freed themselves from the Soviet Union.
Right.
This is a 30+ year process, right? So, one of the nice things about being an economist is I do love history, and politics impacts economics, and I like all of it. So if you follow the progress that got here, it's not a surprise. Now, a CEO of a company should not be that deep into what's going on, but everyone should have had a brief conversation with their employees, either a brief little email or whatever, saying, if this happens,
Right.
we're not expecting much of an impact on our business, due to, or we are going to expect an impact on our business due to, Russia, Europe, Ukraine might be one of your customers. Right. You got to take that a lot differently than somebody who has absolutely no exposure to the situation. So determine it, let your employees know the situation, and then let them know that they're safe, or you have a plan in place to keep everything moving forward and their livelihood safe. That's team morale. And then, of course, the CEOs are doing heavy lifting in the background. All right, what levers are we pulling to make sure things work? Same thing with COVID, right? Whether there's a mask mandate or not, or a vaccine mandate or not, or a lockdown or not, let your people know you're good. We've got you. Here's our plan.
Very well said.
And that's it.
Calmer heads prevail.
It doesn't have to be very elaborate. Yeah. People want to know, that you care about them and they're being taken care of. Yeah. And the best way to do that, again, is, hey, I'm anticipating a problem. I'll get out ahead of it. Because remember, with a lack of knowledge and a lack of communication, we are going to fill in the vacuum by ourselves.
True.
And there may be some people who say, I'm not worried about it, whatever. But most people are doing the 7 o'clock in the morning phone call saying, oh my God, are we going out of business? Am I going to lose my job? That's you don't want that. So like I said, anticipate different outcomes and communicate the fact that you've got this. You're aware that different things may happen. And therefore, for me, I haven't received any phone calls this week from anybody.
Speaking of phone calls, Brian, you're one of my favorite people to talk about economics and the future and money with, and I would love to open that opportunity to any of our members. We'll post this on our website. But do you want to, I'm going to post your information if that's okay down below the video, but if you could share it, if people want to reach out to you and have a conversation with you, either about the economy or about, finances, because you're so really great at that. I think you said last week was your best, your last month or last week was your best of your career. And I do really well when things get gnarly, I guess is the best way to describe it. Because when everything's going great, it's like your health. I'm in great health. I'll skip my physical this year. Right. Oh, geez, something weird's going on here. I better go get it checked out. This looks pretty urgent. And that's when I really do well. So I've been doing quite well ever since COVID broke. For that reason, because the world is so different now. I do have to read a little bit of a script for our compliance department. So I am a private wealth advisor for SageMark Consulting. We're a registered representative of Lincoln Financial Advisors. So I work for myself, but Lincoln is the broker-dealer. Securities are offered through Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer and a member of SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through SageMark Consulting is a division of Lincoln Financial Advisors. It's a registered investment advisor. Insurance offered through Lincoln affiliates and other fine companies. So what that means. Well done.
I had to read it because I refuse to memorize it. But the way my practice is set up is really I help people transition from A to B. I don't manage people's money. I have people who manage it for them. I'm coordinating their team. So we're talking to the tax advisor, with the insurance advisor, with the money manager, with whoever is involved to really get you from A to B and really anticipate the fact that it's not a linear line from now to the end of our lives. Cannot possibly go the way we think it's going to go. It's just too random, and there's too many events we just simply don't control. So we anticipate different outcomes. Operations research from my grad school days, and like I say, help people get there where if one road closes, you just take a right or a left and go around it.
Awesome, Brian. Do you want to I'm always impressed by you, and I'm so thankful for your time today.
Thank you. Now, are you going to list the phone number or email, or should I do that right
Yeah,
now?
why don't you share it, and I will also list it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the easiest way to reach me is 860-882-3889. So once again, that's 860-882-3889. My email is my name, Brian.Noe, BRIAN.NOE @lfg.com. Once again, that's lfg.com, LarryFrankGary.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. And I appreciate your time today. And I always appreciate that I feel like I can call you when I have a question about the economy or the future or finances. And you are just, you're amazing. Thank you so much for all you do.
Well, thank you so much. You made your day. I think I'll take the rest of the day off.
All right.
Can't get any better than this.
Take care.